Heartwarming rescue. Single dad saves girl on bridge discover her incredible life-changing secret. John stood under the weight of gray clouds, the air thick with tension and the promise of a storm. His hand was deep in the guts of his old truck, the kind that had seen better days and could whisper stories if it could talk. The engine sputtered, and he muttered a curse under his breath, but nothing seemed to work. Just another weight in a life already heavy with struggle. Leaning against the fender, he closed his eyes, picturing his daughter, Lily, laughing as she smeared batter on his face during their legendary pancake breakfasts. It was moments like those that made the grind worth it. Suddenly, a piercing scream sliced through the silence, a cry that twisted his stomach in knots. Adrenaline shot through him. He rushed towards the noise and stumbled upon a scene that would change everything: a terrified girl, Sarah, clinging to the edge of the old bridge. Time seemed to slow. Without thinking, he reached out, grasped her wrist, and pulled her to safety, their shared breath ragged and heavy with fear. Her wide eyes, filled with gratitude and terror, haunted him even as she took her first wobbly steps back onto solid ground. As the story spread like wildfire through their small town, whispers turned to wary glances, with some townsfolk shaking their heads. A single father, a mechanic, no less, dared involve himself in the affairs of a runaway girl. Did he have any business saving someone else's child? The judgment stung like barbs, and John fought to hold his head high. What would Lily think? He asked himself, clutching her hand tightly and reassuring her with unshakable resolve. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days blended into one another as Sarah sat at their kitchen table, sketching vibrant art that spilled with emotion. John and Lily watched as the colors danced on the paper, igniting something deep within them. John's heart swelled with pride for this girl he barely knew, but felt he needed to protect. Lily beamed, cheering on her new friend, while John struggled internally. His heart begged him to allow Sarah to chase her dreams, but his fatherly instincts fought against the potential fallout. The confrontation with Sarah's parents was imminent. An ultimatum hung over them like a storm cloud. They demanded that Sarah return to a life of suffocating expectations, but John's heart surged with the fire of justice. He was determined to stand against the tide. Tension crackled in the air as whispers grew louder, echoing with disapproval, but his resolve only hardened. This wasn't just about a girl, this was about family, love, and what it truly means to have a home. As the town council meeting approached, John felt the weight of Sarah's dreams resting on his shoulders. There was a moment in every man's life when he must stand for what's right. As he stepped forward to speak, his chest tightened and his hands trembled at the podium. Would the community see the truth of Sarah's heart, or would they retreat into the shadows of their biases? All eyes turned to him, filled with expectation and dread. A moment of reckoning awaited. What would happen next could ripple out, changing lives forever. John could feel the weight of all the gazes upon him, some curious, some judgmental, and others full of concern. Every breath he took felt monumental, a silent plea to the universe to grant him the strength to speak. He could barely register the clamor of chairs scraping against the floor, and the murmur of anxious whispers drifting through the packed room. Standing at the podium, he saw Lily's small frame at the back, her wide eyes filled with fierce encouragement. Beside her, Sarah's face glowed with a cautious hope that swirled in the air like the scent of rain before a storm. They believed in him. That thought fueled him, it lit a fire in his gut. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice steadying just a bit, I stand before you not just as a mechanic, or as a single father, but as someone who has witnessed extraordinary courage. The audience shifted, leaning in a little closer. He continued, Sarah is not just a runaway. She's a girl with dreams and talents that are far bigger than the walls that have been built around her. She deserves the chance to embrace her path, just like our children do. A few heads nodded, and a murmur of agreement floated through the crowd. As he spoke, he recounted the wild moment on the bridge, the panic in Sarah's eyes, and the strength he felt in her grip. He shared Lily's laughter, their pancake mornings, and the beauty of family forged not just by blood, but by love and shared experience. Each word wove together a tapestry of connection, a glimpse into their lives that the audience couldn't help but feel. But even as he talked, doubt flickered behind the looks exchanged between the council members. They were torn, grappling with the judgment of protecting traditions against the yearning to support a child's spirit. John pressed on, pouring his heart into every sentence, hoping that someone would stand with him. "I was raised to believe that family is everything," he said earnestly. "And family isn't just who shares our blood, but those we open our hearts to." The words echoed in the small room, resonating with genuine emotion as he searched the crowd for a familiar face, any sign of support. Then came the challenger, a councilman who rose slowly, a furrowed brow marking his skepticism. "And what about her parents, John? They want her back. Can you deny that right?" John's heart sank. It was the question he had braced himself for. "It's not about denying rights." His voice tightened, but he kept it steady. "It's about recognizing that sometimes, the ones who love us the most might also mislead us. We must distinguish between love that suffocates and love that frees." A tense silence filled the room, and he could feel the collective breath catch. Sarah looked down, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the paper before her. John's heart raced. Would they understand? Just then, Lily broke the silence, raising her small hand high. "They should let her stay. We have room in our family." Her voice rang out like a bell, bright and hopeful, a child's innocent plea that shattered the heavy atmosphere. As the council members exchanged glances, John felt the swell of hope blossom within him. But lurking in the shadows was one councilman whose expression was unreadable, his silence a storm gathering on the horizon. What would happen next in this battle for family and belonging? Would courage prevail against tradition, or would Sarah be swept away back into the life that sought to stifle her spirit? Speaking out was only the beginning. The real fight had just begun. John stood at the podium, the weight of the room pressing down on him, and he felt the thump of his heart echo like a drumbeat in the silence. The councilman who had challenged him, his tight-lipped expression was like a wall standing between John and the hope he fought to clutch. Every second stretched into eternity. People's eyes hovered like fireflies, flickering with uncertainty. "What about her parents, John?" The question lingered, heavy with implications. The hum of voices begun to rise again, anger mixing with concern. "What do you expect us to do?" It was another council member, his voice sharp and cutting through the tension like a knife. John took a deep breath, grounding himself in Lily's unwavering gaze. She sparkled with innocence and determination, a small beacon of hope in a vast sea of doubt. "I expect you to think about what it means to let a child go back to a place where she doesn't feel safe, where she can't shine. Sarah deserves freedom to explore who she truly is. Don't we all?" He felt the audience begin to shift, caught between the tugging threads of obligation and the pull of compassion. It was like watching a tide turning, inch by inch. Yet, fear trudged alongside hope, and John saw it in the furrowed brows and whispered exchanges among council members. Then, the same skeptical councilman who had risen earlier leaned forward, his fingers steepled like a traitorous bridge over a beckoning divide. "You talk about dreams and family, but what are we really creating here? Chaos or a community?" His words were probing, unyielding. "Sometimes, change looks like chaos," John replied, feeling fire in his veins. "It's an ugly truth, but it's a necessary one. If we don't fight for those who can't fight for themselves, are we not just creating an even bigger prison?" The murmurs grew, a ripple of voices weaving through the tension. John's throat tightened as he caught sight of Sarah, her head lowered, shoulders drawn in. He couldn't let her think she was alone in this fight. "Sarah is not just someone we should protect, she is someone we should empower," he proclaimed, his voice now a mix of resolve and warmth. "She has a voice, and it deserves to be heard. If we stifle her spirit, we stifle our own humanity." A shift occurred within the assembly. Some nodded cautiously, their firm barriers beginning to show cracks. John seized the moment, pushing harder. Don't we owe it to our community to ensure that every child feels they have a place? A home? We are crafted from the love we share, not just the rules we follow. With each word, hope fluttered like a bird trying to gain flight. In that instant, a councilwoman, who had remained silent throughout, leaned in. What if we listened to her? She asked, her voice breaking the spell. Maybe we can hear Sarah's truth. What does she want? The crowd fell into a suspenseful hush as attention shifted to Sarah. John held his breath. Would she speak? He had seen so much courage in her spirit, and now it was time for her to find her voice. Sarah slowly lifted her head, her wide eyes glistening with unshed tears, yet reflecting an unshakable resolve. She took a breath, and the room seemed to hold its collective breath along with her. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the door swung open with a heavy thud, interrupting the moment. A familiar figure appeared, her parents, faces taut with emotion and determination. The atmosphere shifted again, tension morphing into something palpable and electric. What have we been doing? John thought. As he faced the sudden shift in dynamics, dread crept in. Would the arrival of Sarah's parents change everything they fought to build, or was it an unexpected opportunity for real dialogue? The moment hung in the air, waiting for someone to break it. John's heart raced as Sarah's parents strode forward, their expressions a mix of defiance and desperation. They surveyed the audience like hawks, their eyes flitting suspiciously from face to face. Silence reigned, thick and heavy, suffocating the air. Sarah's mouth fell shut, her voice snatched away in an instant. The hope that shimmered in her wide eyes dimmed, replaced by a worry that twisted her small features. Mom! Dad! Sarah's voice finally broke through, small and uncertain. She rose from her seat, taking a hesitant step towards them. I was trying to explain. But her mother, a storm of emotions, held up a hand. Sarah, you don't need to explain. You should be with us. We love you. We're your family. The finality in her tone sent a jolt through John, as if he'd been struck with a loud clap of thunder. But I don't want to go back, Sarah exclaimed, her voice rising with a fierce determination. I want to stay here. The sincerity of her plea echoed around the chamber, breaking the tension into fragile fragments. John knew this was a pivotal moment, the kind that could sway the council. Sarah's father shifted, his jaw tightened as he glanced at John, gauging the room's response. This is wrong, she shouldn't be part of this. Anger dripped from his words, as if he were ready to retract them in an instant, realizing the reception wasn't what he had expected. Please, John interjected, stepping closer to Sarah, positioning himself as a bridge between hope and fear. Let her speak. This is about her life, her choice. His eyes flickered towards Sarah. She was trembling, but the fire of her spirit was still there, flickering like a small flame undeterred by the winds of doubt. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, uncertainty clouding their faces. This was raw and real, and they could see the depth of connection between John and Sarah. They all knew, instinctively, that this was more than a debate. It was about love, safety, and belonging. Sarah, John gently prodded, tell them why you want to stay. With a gulp, Sarah wiped away a stray tear and took a shaky breath. I've never felt safe at home. I love my parents, but... Her voice faltered as she fought against the weight of the pain that flooded back. They don't understand me. I can't be myself. Here I can be me. She looked at each council member, defiant and vulnerable all at once. I want to be an artist. I want to be free. The room filled with murmurs and whispers again, but they were different this time, curious, contemplative. The atmosphere had shifted, teetering on the brink of understanding. You think this is about you, don't you? Sarah's father said, arms crossed defiantly across his chest. What about our family? His tone was now desperate, a hint of vulnerability surfacing amid his anger. Maybe it's time our family changes, John murmured, a small voice of reason amongst the rising tide. The fight to create a kinder world had merged with the struggle for Sarah's spirit. Council members appeared torn, their expressions a swirling mixture of concern and compassion. Everything hung in a delicate balance. As the councilwoman who had spoken earlier leaned forward again, her presence felt commanding. John knew they were teetering closer to a decision. What is family, if we cannot accept the real selves of our loved ones? She questioned, her voice resonating through the chamber like a gentle breeze. The air in the room was electric, filled with the currents of possibility, the weight of the impending moment. What would happen next? Would they choose to embrace change? Or would they retreat into the safety of tradition? With hearts racing, they waited for a response, for clarity to break through the fog of indecision. A moment lingered, heavy. What choice would they make, and what ripple would this choice send through their lives? Are we ready to embrace the truth? John thought, clutching a hope that burned as bright as the fiery sunset painting the sky outside. In the silence, one question hovered above them all: would they rise together, or would they let this chance slip away? The murmur of the crowd grew louder, an anxious hum that filled the space like a living entity. John's heart pounded harder, matching the discordant rhythm of the whispers swirling around him. It was as if the energy in the room had taken on a life of its own, teetering between acceptance and rejection. Sarah, her mother's voice quivered now, a trace of vulnerability creeping in. Please don't do this. But Sarah stood firm, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Mom, I'm not trying to hurt you. I just want to be who I am. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through, steeling herself for the fight ahead. John felt a pang of admiration for her courage. This wasn't just about a choice. It represented a generation standing up for themselves, declaring their right to exist authentically. He took another step closer to her, their shoulders brushing, a silent show of solidarity. The councilwoman leaned forward in her chair, her expression one of intense focus. Sarah, if you choose to stay, what does that mean for you? What does being free truly look like? The question hung in the air, pressing against Sarah's resolve. She pondered it for a heartbeat, then spoke with cautious clarity. It means I can paint without fear. It means I can love who I want without shame. It means being a part of something bigger, something that feels like home. A collective sigh escaped from those assembled, some nodding while others shifted uncomfortably. The tension in the room seemed to warp and bend, almost oscillating like a taut rubber band ready to snap. Sarah's father clenched his fists, his struggle evident. And what about our family? You are part of us. His voice trembled, revealing a deep, familial ache. Maybe I can still be part of the family, Sarah countered gently, but in a way that allows us all to grow. I want to support you and let you love me as I am. The silence that followed felt eternal. The council members looked around, realizing they had drifted into an uncharted territory of emotions, one where decisions weighed heavily on the hearts of everyone present. John took a breath, heart pounding. This is about acceptance. We've all been there, struggling to fit in, to please those we love. But at what cost? He turned to Sarah's parents, their faces a mixture of confusion and introspection. What you are asking Sarah to give up is her identity. Would you ask anyone else to do the same? The question hung like a challenge, igniting the flickers of doubt in the parents' minds. Could they really ask their daughter to sacrifice herself? Shifting slightly on his feet, John felt the ground beneath him steady. He caught Sarah's eye, seeking assurance that they were still on the same page. She nodded slightly, a blend of fear and hope shimmering in her gaze. The councilwoman stood again, her presence commanding. We have a choice. Change is difficult, but it is also necessary for growth. Her eyes scanned the room, gathering the sentiments of her fellow council members. If we reject Sarah's truth, what message does that send to our community? A wave of understanding rippled through the audience. It was a yearning for familial love intermingled with the desire for authenticity. As conversations sparked and council members began to murmur amongst themselves, John felt hope blooming in his chest. Perhaps they were on the verge of something remarkable. Or perhaps it could all unravel in an instant. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and all eyes turned. A figure stepped inside, a stranger, tall and cloaked in shadows, holding a hint of something important. I have news. Their voice rang through the space, cutting through the tension like a knife. What could this mean? Would the looming moment of truth slip away again, or would it serve as the catalyst for everything to change? The figure stepped further into the room, the dim light casting an enigmatic silhouette against the anxious crowd. As they moved forward, the whispers rippled out like stones thrown into water, creating a blend of intrigue and unease. Every gaze was now fixed on the newcomer, hearts pounding with anticipation. I've come to tell you about a situation, the stranger continued, their voice steady yet carrying an air of urgency. A young girl is in trouble, and her story holds the key to something much bigger than you realize. John could see Sarah's breath hitch in her throat as her focus shifted to the stranger. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely a whisper but filled with intensity. It seemed like a sudden twist in the narrative, an uncharted territory where hope and concern blended. The stranger looked around at the gathered crowd, gauging their reactions before proceeding. Sometimes change is not just personal, it's interconnected with others. This girl, she was a victim of the very thing you're discussing here today: rejection, a loss of identity. Gasps rippled through the audience, and Sarah's eyes widened. John felt the pulse of compassion surge within him, fueling his resolve. This wasn't just about their confrontation. It was about a wider fate, echoing the struggles of countless others. What happened to her? Sarah's voice trembled, filled with the weight of unspoken questions, mirroring the crowd's collective anxiety. She stood on the edge of a bridge today, nearly ready to jump, the stranger revealed, their voice low, yet it resonated with an intensity that caused hearts to stop. She needed someone to believe in her, to show her that embracing her truth was worth living for. A stunned silence enveloped the gathering. John's heart raced, a knot of fear tightening in his chest. A life was hanging in the balance, and he realized that every obstacle Sarah faced was reflected in this stranger's story. We often think of our battles as isolated, the stranger continued, but they are pieces of a larger puzzle. The older generations, including yourselves, have the power to either turn a blind eye or stand tall as allies. Your choice matters. The light flickered, shadows dancing across the faces of the council members, each one grappling with the weight of the stranger's words. What can we do? John found himself asking, fueled by an urgent need to act. How can we help this girl? She needs to know she is not alone, the stranger replied, pausing to let the words sink in. She needs love without conditions, and she needs both your support and your willingness to change. You have the power to shift the tides. Sarah's grip on John's arm tightened, and he felt the warmth of her courage seep into his own resolve. Then let us not just talk, she spoke with newfound strength, let us do something. We can change this. We can reach her before it's too late. The crowd, sparked by her words, began to murmur and strategize. John felt the hope swell between them, expanding as a shared mission took shape. Listen, the stranger said, their voice slicing through the chatter, but it begins with you. You need to decide if you will choose love over fear. Would they pull together to save this girl and, in doing so, save themselves? As the tension in the room shifted towards action, John witnessed a moment of unity blooming amidst the fear. But would they find the girl in time? Would their journey tie their lives together in ways they never expected? The air buzzed with purpose as the crowd leaned closer, eyes wide with determination. John could feel Sarah's heart beating against his arm, a rhythm of shared urgency that anchored him. We can't waste any more time, she urged. Her voice cut through the noise, igniting a spark of clarity among the growing chaos. Let's split up, someone suggested, their hands shaking with nervous energy. I can take the east side of the river, and maybe a few of us can head west? Others nodded in agreement, instantly forming small groups as John felt the collective will crystallize into action. I'll go with Sarah, John declared, his thoughts racing. We'll check the bridge first. He squeezed her hand gently, exchanging a silent promise that they wouldn't let fear or doubt hold them back. They navigated through the crowd, each step fueled by adrenaline and hope. Outside, the cool evening air hit their faces. John felt his heart thrum against his chest, coaxing urgency through his veins. The sun sank low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the anxiety flooding his thoughts. What if we don't make it in time? He glanced at Sarah, steeling her fortitude. You have to believe, she replied, locking eyes with him, her faith a lifeline that pulled him forward into the unknown. She needs us. We can't let her think nobody cares. As they approached the bridge, an unsettling silence cloaked the area. The distant sound of water flowed beneath them, steady and soothing, yet John's mind raced with the weight of possible despair. They searched the shadows and glanced over the railing, looking for a sign, an indication that the girl was still there. Over there! Sarah suddenly pointed, her voice tight with emotion. Just beyond the concrete support, they spotted a figure, a young girl curled tight with her arms wrapped around her knees. John felt his stomach drop. She looked so small, so vulnerable against the backdrop of empty space. Stay here, he commanded softly, taking a step closer. He could see the girl's tear-streaked face, her eyes lost in a tumult of pain and confusion. Every fiber of his being screamed to protect her, to wrap her in words that would bring comfort and understanding. Hey, he said gently, inching forward, please don't move. She flinched at the sound of his voice, her gaze darting to the edge, then back to him, uncertainty flickering in her eyes like a candle barely staying lit. You're not alone, he assured her, channeling every ounce of love and compassion he felt for his daughter, for Sarah, for all that stood in the balance. Please, I can't, her voice trembled like a fragile whisper. Nobody understands, I do, John replied, shaking off doubt. I understand more than you can imagine. I've been where you are now. I know it feels endless, like you have no way out. He dared to take another step, inviting her to connect. Why would you care? She stammered softly, fear wrapping her words like chains. Because I do. Because we all do, Sarah chimed in, stepping beside John. She reached out slowly, her hand extended, mirroring the openness in her heart. You are not just a number or a story, you're a person beautiful and worth every fight. Please let us help you. The girl shifted, her focus darting between the water below and the outstretched hands before her. John's heart caught in his throat. This was the moment. Could they reach her spirit before she fell into despair? Would she find the strength to grasp their hands? The air grew thick with tension as time seemed to stretch, and for the first time, a flicker of hope danced in the girl's gaze, a possibility of trusting again. But would it be enough to pull her back from the edge? Could they turn this narrative around together? John held his breath, perilously poised at the edge of salvation, as a bright, long-hidden truth began to emerge. The girl hesitated, her gaze flickering between the hands reaching out to her and the churning waters below. For a moment, the world felt suspended, a fragile heartbeat hanging in the air. John's heart pounded, each beat echoing a silent prayer. Please, Sarah urged softly, you don't have to do this alone. The girl winced, as if Sarah's words were a lifeline she desperately wanted but was terrified to take. John felt an ache in his chest, the heaviness of hope mixed with fear. He knew what a single moment could change. He had seen it before and didn't want this one to slip away. I'm scared, the girl whispered, her voice cracking. I don't know how to go back. You don't have to go back alone, John said gently. Everyone feels lost sometimes, even when they don't show it. You're not a burden, you matter. The girl's eyes darted towards the water, and for just a second, John thought she would choose the abyss. But then he caught a glimpse of something else, vulnerability mixed with a flicker of longing. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly, managing to keep his voice steady. Think of one person who cares about you, John said, his tone soothing but firm. Someone who would feel broken if you weren't here. Can you do that? The girl's brow furrowed, and for the first time, her expression softened. My mom, she would be sad. Her voice was quieter now, like an ember trying not to go out. It was as if the moment had cracked a door open, allowing a sliver of light to seep in. Exactly, Sarah chimed in. We are all here for you. It's okay to feel scared, but let us help you. You don't have to carry this weight alone anymore. The girl's posture shifted. She leaned slightly towards them. John stepped closer, grounding himself in the moment, ready to catch her if she chose to move forward. Just take our hands, he encouraged gently. Feel how real this is. You don't have to make all the decisions right now. Just one step, just trust us for that step. Time seemed to flip around them, the air heavy with anticipation. The girl took a shaky breath. Her small hands crawled out toward theirs. First her fingertips touched the warm palms, then slowly she started to interlace with Sarah's and John's, as if connecting fragile strands of hope. As she grasped their hands tightly, John felt a surge of warmth spreading through him. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. For that instant, they were three beings fighting against the tide together. Now let us move back from the edge, Sarah coaxed, her voice a soft anchor. John could see the girl's resolve building, her eyes sparkling with the fragile beauty of emerging courage. A few feet back from the railing, everything felt surreal. The world resumed around them, the shout of their friends off the bridge blending into the rush of the river. Why do you care so much? The girl asked, genuine curiosity breaking through the fear. Because we all survived storms, John replied, smiling gently. We all needed someone once. And maybe, just maybe, you can be that person for someone else someday, too. The girl's lips quivered, and in that moment she saw herself reflected in them. There was a possibility, a thread of belonging that had been snatched back from the brink. But just as relief began to unfurl, a distant shout pulled their gaze away. John! Sarah! We need help over here! A rush of adrenaline surged anew. They turned, and John's heart sank, gripping the girl's hand just a little tighter. Stay with us, he urged. What if this rescue wasn't over yet? What other surprises awaited them in the gathering dusk? John held his breath, heart racing once again, as they all stood together at the crossroads of multiple battles, not just one. Instinct kicked in as John turned toward the voice. His mind raced, trying to process the urgency. Let us go, he said to Sarah and the girl. We've got to see what's happening. He tightened his grip on the girl's hand, the warmth of her small palm reassuringly anchoring him. Together, they rushed back towards the sound. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, punctuated by the metallic tang of the river nearby. A cluster of their friends had gathered a little further down the bridge, their voices tinged with concern. As they approached, John caught sight of Mike, one of their closest friends, kneeling beside another figure on the ground. John's chest tightened. There was something on the ground, something he couldn't quite make out through the growing shadows of dusk. Even as fear took root in his heart, he held on to the girl's small hand, grounding her as much as himself. Stay right here, he instructed. Don't move. She nodded, her eyes wide, filled with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. While John stepped closer, Sarah stood beside the girl, her voice steady as she encouraged, You're safe. Just breathe with me. The scene before them unfolded like a nightmare. A boy, not much older than the girl they had just saved, lay sprawled on the ground, his face pale. Mike shouted for someone to call 911, panic cracking his typically confident demeanor. John's heart raced as he knelt next to Mike. What happened? He asked, voice low and steady. He fell. I think he hit his head. Mike's words spilled out in a rush. He was trying to jump across the gap when we were racing to catch up to you guys, and he slipped. John's heart sank further. Is he breathing? Mike checked for a pulse. He pressed his fingers against the boy's neck, his brows furrowing in concentration. I don't know. I can't feel it. The sound of other footsteps approached, their friends streaming in to see what had happened. The energy shifted from hope and encouragement to sheer urgency. The girl gasped, watching in horror, the weight of the situation crashing down on her. Hey! John said, turning back toward her, trying to keep panic from pooling in his own chest. Remember how you felt a minute ago, when we were holding hands? You still have that strength. I need you to stay strong now, okay? Help us by being a little brave just a bit longer. The girl blinked at him, her lip trembling slightly. But she nodded, gripping Sarah's hand even tighter, as if finding reassurance in their presence. Moments slipped away like water through fingers as they worked frantically. One friend called for emergency services while another demanded help from the onlookers to form a space around them. John felt a rush of emotions burning inside him: fear, hope, and a fierce determination. Time felt heavy, like it had swelled to include every second in a prolonged agony. The silence felt oppressive, punctuated by the murmur of voices rising and falling around them. Then, just as despair loomed like an unwelcome shadow, the boy stirred. A faint groan escaped his lips, the tiny sound igniting a flicker of hope in John's heart. "Stay with us, buddy," John called out, desperately willing him to come back to them. But that glimmer was quickly extinguished by the distant wail of sirens approaching. Would they make it in time? Would the boy wake up and be all right? The questions twisted like a knife in John's gut. As the paramedics arrived, John glanced back at the girl. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, he saw the flicker of understanding across her face, a bond forged in fear and resilience. Perhaps, in that moment, they were all fighting for something greater than themselves. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Sarah, her face set in determined resolve. "John, whatever happens, we need to stay together." As the scene unfolded, John could feel a storm of emotions raging within him. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were all intertwined in a deeper story, one that could change them all forever. What lay ahead felt uncertain, but deep inside, a question lingered: would love and hope be enough to save them all? The sirens wailed louder, slicing through the gathering dusk. John gazed at the boy, still lying motionless, as the paramedics rushed to the scene. His heart beat in sync with each urgent footstep, the rhythm of hope battling against the uncertainty that clutched at his throat. "Stay with us, buddy!" John's voice cracked, but he forced himself to maintain a facade of strength. He could see the concern written across Sarah's face, and the girl beside her, trembling yet determined, squeezed Sarah's hand. "Please don't go," John whispered to the boy, wishing fervently for any sign of life. The world around them pulsated, the murmurs from friends, the approach of the paramedics, the heartbeat of life still flickering in the air. As the paramedics got to work, the girl who had been on the edge turned her gaze toward John. "Will he be okay?" Her wide eyes were filled with a mix of terror and hope, reflecting every emotion that had coursed through John's mind just moments before. I hope so," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "But we're not alone in this. We have to believe together." His heart swelled with the need for assurance, and he remembered the fragility of life they'd all grappled with. The paramedics shouted out instructions, and the air buzzed with urgency. They began to assess the boy, administering care as they moved with practiced precision. Everything felt like a whirlwind of chaos, but through it, John felt the connection between them all, the power of community bearing down like a solid rock in a turbulent sea. "Do you remember how we helped that girl?" John said softly to the girl at his side, an idea igniting in him. "You showed such bravery. You can do it again. You can help him." Her brows furrowed, uncertainty flicking across her face. But just then, one of the paramedics looked toward them. "You all have to stay calm and stay back a little. We need to work quickly." "I want to help," she whispered, her voice quaking with concern but determination. "You are helping just by being here," John encouraged, feeling the swell of solidarity. "Your strength matters. Remember, you're not alone. We're a team, just like we were before." As the emergency team worked diligently, John could feel the air ripple with tension. Hope hung precariously, like a fragile spider's web, ready to snap at any moment. The boy's eyes fluttered open, and then shut again, prompting the paramedics to quicken their pace. Stay with us," John repeated, feeling a rush of relief as he met the worried gazes of Sarah and the girl beside him. The storm of emotions that had been swirling around them, fear, anxiety, love, now felt like the unifying force that bound them together. Suddenly, the sirens quietened, cutting sharply against the new reality as the team prepared to lift the boy onto a stretcher. "He'll be okay," one of the paramedics reassured them, glancing back with an encouraging nod. "We just need to get him to the hospital." As they rolled the stretcher away, John felt an immense weight lift off his shoulders. Relief flooded through him like sunlight breaking through dark clouds. "We did it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, reverberating in the hushed atmosphere that followed. The girl looked at John, her wide eyes brimming with bravery and a newfound sense of belonging. In that very moment, a shift happened. She was no longer merely a scared girl on the brink. She had become a part of a larger story that embraced compassion and love. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice filled with gratitude. "For what?" John asked, surprised. "For making me feel like I belong," she said, her voice steady for the first time, a radiant smile on her face. "I thought no one cared." John knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "You were never alone." "None of us are," he reassured her. Sarah stepped up beside them, her own eyes shimmering with the trust they had built together. Together as a trio, they felt ready to face anything. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting vibrant hues of pink and orange across the sky, John looked up at the breathtaking view. This moment the rescue, the connection, the peace had transformed them all. They had emerged together as a community, bound by the struggles that had tested their resolve. "It's just the beginning," John thought as he squeezed the girl's shoulder gently. They had conquered fear and despair, and a sense of belonging had been forged anew amid the chaos. Community was built piece by piece, stretched across hearts intertwined, not just the ties of blood but those of love, understanding, and acceptance. And in that moment, John knew they would continue fighting for anyone who felt lost or alone, just like they had been. The journey ahead may be challenging, filled with more storms yet to weather, but they would tackle it together with courage in their hearts, a fierce optimism, and the unwavering spirit of family. As they turned back toward the bridge, the connection between them felt more immense than the expanse they had just crossed. A sense of hope bloomed, alive and real. John looked down at the girl beside him and thought of the strength within them all. Together, they would rise, a promise to change the narrative, to craft a story built on truth and acceptance, one propelled by a fierce love that challenged every obstacle in its path. And as they took that first step forward, he couldn't shake off the feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, this was the moment they would inspire others, spreading courage and connection across their community for generations to come. Now is the time for you to act. If you've been moved by this story, you need to subscribe now to the channel. Don't let this moment slip away. This is the moment to show your support. Drop a like right now to feed the algorithm and keep these incredible stories alive. We want to hear from you. Comment your heartfelt reactions and feelings about this ending. Let us keep the conversation going. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation and find hope in their own lives. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel, so step up and be part of this incredible journey.